Konnichiwa. Welcome to the Martial Maze. I'm with my partner in crime, Barakula Chidoshi.
And I'm with my partner here, Israel Lopez Sensei. What's up?
What's going on, brother? So check it. We have a special guest. We got BlackHawk Sensei, and he's coming to us from like Florida, man.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Cool.
Konnichiwa.
What's up?
Konnichiwa. Genki desu ka? I'm down here with family, based in Brooklyn, New York, but right now I'm in sunny Florida and I'm enjoying it. I'm excited to be on with you guys, man. First off, I gotta say, I'm a huge fan of you brothers.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate it.
That's awesome.
I love
We
everything that you guys are doing.
All right, so we're gonna get in. We're just gonna jump right in, right? Because I'm running a little behind today.
That's how I do it.
I got
just
stuck
jump
in that
the cold
Massachusetts
water.
traffic and stuff like that. So, I would love to say this comes across as a grievance, but it's not. It's
a grievance.
Oh, really? We're gonna call it
I
a
think
grievance?
it is.
Okay, all right. Well,
You're bothered by it, right? It bothers you. It ruffles your feathers.
You just fired in with it's a grievance. All right, so it's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, and I do follow his stuff and stuff like that. And he recently posted something. It was a reel because I love my reels, and I got my feelings about it, but I understood why he did it. I understood it was for marketing. It was to get people talking about his reel, this, that, and the third. But the whole thing was why BJJ is the best martial art. It's the best martial art. It's the best. It's the greatest martial art out there. It tops all the other martial art systems. And I know. At first I'm like, okay, all right. So first thing he says is it works. It actually works. And if you don't believe me, come to my school. So it's a challenge kind of thing. Come to my school. All right. So hold your thoughts. The second thing was he talks about, cauliflower ear, because if you see the cauliflower ear, you're going to instantly think, hey, that guy knows Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I might not want to mess with him. That guy must be some kind of grappler. This, that, and the third. I might not want to mess with him. And third, he lists all fights. Most of them, almost all of them, go to the ground. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specializes in what? Ground fighting. So, yes, these are the three reasons. Absolutely. And I'm like, the hell is wrong with this dude? So I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, so this is where it segues in. And I'm like, so the first things first. I end up hitting him back up, wrote back to him. I haven't heard back since, right? So I hit him up. And I'm just kind of like, well, oddly enough, I feel like I must have experienced a different set of violence than you. Because here's the first things first. One of the first things he says is that it's the going to the ground. I said, well, clearly you never fought more than one person before. You've never been jumped. Because if you've been jumped, it's the one place you never want to end up is on the ground. You're still talking sport. And he says, well, come to my school because it really works. Come to my school. Now, you know damn well, if you and a group of dudes show up at that man's school looking to get into a real fight, that brother's calling the cops. So, I mean, what he really was saying was, hey, come work, do some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And there was the Jesse Enkamp, the karate nerd. He did one with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I wasn't a fan of how he did it, but I did like the point he was making about it to a degree. Well, because I've done this myself.
I still haven't checked it out.
Listen, it was, I guess there's good in everything, So my personal opinion about it was I got his point that he was trying to make, and then we're talking about Jesse Enkamp. I got his point. But don't enter a sport competition and then break the rules in the competition. That's not a good look. If you really want to challenge something or challenge somebody, go to their spot, say, hey, look, I'm here to challenge that. And the point Jesse was basically making is, if I don't want to go to the ground, you can't get me to the ground. And there's a lot of truth in that. If you got somebody who absolutely doesn't want to go fight in the ground, and we're talking about real fighting, and it's not agreed upon rule set. So if I invite you to my school and you walk in and you want to punch and kick, and you come with 4 different guys that want to punch and kick and fight like that, and I can't address that on the one, then I'm not. Why did I issue that challenge? Now, don't get me wrong. I understood why that brother was saying it, why he was making this, because again, it's a good claim. The cauliflower ear thing. I've grappled. I've been on the ground. I've never had cauliflower ear. I've been fortunate enough. Apparently, it just happens. Some people get cauliflower ear. Other people don't. I will tell you like this. If you see somebody with cauliflower ear, and you have a problem with them, well, it's like back in the day with karate. I know karate. I don't tell you I know karate. I just you come off and then I hit you with it, and that's the loss is yours. You lost that battle. So if I see the cauliflower ear, what all I see is, okay, yeah, you know how to grapple. So the one thing I'm not going to do with you is grapple. Or I'm going to stab you a handful of times with the knife on my side because I'm not going to grapple with you. Or you're going to want to grab me, which is awesome because you'll never see me stabbing you with that knife X amount of times. You're just never going to see it. You're going to feel it, but you're never going to see it. Any thoughts, gentlemen? I'm sorry. That was my little tire. I didn't mean to monopolize the whole thing.
You want our guests?
BlackHawk. What are your thoughts?
And then I'll put in my thoughts.
So I have so many that I'm going to really keep it concise because I'm going to run on a little bit. One, the gentleman must be early in his journey, I'm going to assume. And he must be a wonderful student because he really loves and believes in what he does. Right? Mm-hmm. So in Buddhism, they talk about like the three realms, right? The three, I might be misquoting the three evils, but basically greed, anger, and delusion. Delusion is the most powerful and one to kind of fight against because you don't know what's happening, right? So he reminds me of a young me. A lot of people don't know that, but my base is what would be typically considered BJJ, Newaza. And I started it as the Gracie's philosophy teacher because my teacher, Sensei Evans, was very good friends with the family. And I quickly realized, okay, you know all these other things. Please share these other things with me because as it stands alone, it's incomplete in a realistic confrontation. So when he's talking about it really works, I will say this. Any martial art is going to work for you if you make it work for you. It's not the art, it's the person, it's the practitioner.
Absolutely.
It's the level of their understanding. And what happens is people fall short of that understanding so often. You see people like the gentleman you're talking about that don't understand that there's other types of jujitsu. In fact, I'm going to scratch that. There's only one jujitsu, right? It's various categories and layers to jujitsu. Mm-hmm. BJJ Newaza is just one aspect of that. And if you're locked in a room with no doors and no windows and it's cousin Bob, Uncle Bob, who had a few too many to drink at the family barbecue, BJJ is a wonderful thing to do and use. And there's the sports side and the self-defense side. And when you look at the self-defense side, which in my opinion is not really taught too often these days, right? People say they're doing it, but it's really sport they're teaching. Just my opinion.
Oh, yeah. No.
When you really look at the self-defense side, there's punches, there's eye gouging, I still remember this happened 27 years ago. I still remember what my best friend at the time, what his fingers taste like. I shouldn't know what another man's fingers taste like because I had him 6 ways to Sunday, and the only thing he can do was fish hook me and rip back to get me off of him. There's no rules in the street. And while we're down there and someone says you can't take me down, I can absolutely take down anybody I want to take down. You can't stop me. But what am I giving up? Mm-hmm. I'll take you down, but I might die because of it. What am I sacrificing to get that thing? You know, you made a lot of beautiful points about getting stabbed. And in fact, traditional Koru Jujitsu, when you're talking about the Newaza, when you're talking about it, the way the samurai applied it, they started on their horse, right? Mm-hmm. They started long range. They got close range. They got knocked down. Perhaps in the struggle, someone lost their weapon. And now you had to do something quick because you would get stabbed by the secondary weapon. And when you factor in that they're wearing armor and they can only move a certain way, absolutely. Something like Jujigatami, right? Mm-hmm. That's not the way it's done traditionally. You got to hook that other the other arm, so they can't reach for the katana to stab, not katana, the tanto to stab you, or whatever the secondary weapon is. Mm-hmm. things have been changed a lot to modernize it and whatever the case is. And I could go on a tirade for hours on that, but I want to kind of wheel myself in. Um, First off, for whatever reason, as an instructor, as a teacher, as someone who's guiding somebody on the path to the way, I should be educating my students to let them know that this is what we do, but it comes from this. We're focusing on this one thing. That part of that knowledge and is not being passed down for whatever reason. Either the instructors themselves don't know because it wasn't passed down to them. Either it's just not good marketing for their business. And that's don't get me started on that one. Martial arts as a business versus otherwise, right? Martial arts was never intended to be a business. If you can make money at it, more power to you. If you can make money at it and still not sell out, even better. However, at the core of it is a lack of communication. And I think at the core of most conflicts, that's what it boils down to. Lack of communication in one form or the other. The students are only, and this gentleman is only speaking what he knows and what his level of understanding is, right?
Well, I will. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And the cauliflower ear thing, I've been grappling for damn near, since I was a teenager. Why? And most people don't even, well, now they will, but most people don't even know that I have substantial groundwork, because my thing has always been, I'm going to train my weaknesses until they're no longer distinguishable from my strengths. If I'm not punching Mike Tyson, I'm going to shoot him. I'm not pulling a sword or a knife on a Kali guy. I'm going to shoot him. I'm not going against I'm not going to shoot him. Just saying.
No, but you know what? No, there's a lot. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, in this gentleman's defense, I will say that I took the reel as more of a marketing tool. And that's what I'm hoping. I'm 1,000% hoping, giving the benefit of the doubt, believing that this individual realistically, might only believe half of what he's saying, or might believe 100% of what he's saying in the realm of sport. That I don't really think that I'm hoping that this individual doesn't truly believe that their art is superior to that of other martial systems. But that's kind of that's kind of where we're at in today's discussion, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't know, it's the superiority. Is there one art that's more superior than another? And then does our culture, I know we talked about it in the previous episode, but I think we kind of hinted on it. Does our culture dictate our perceptions of violence? And I make that statement, and why I have you guys on today and really want to get a little more of a deep dive into it is because in this guy's world, maybe he's never experienced, because I know there's somebody out there listening right now that's going like, oh, there they go, that little catch-all, a gun or a knife, and and something like that. And we're going, well, if you're not thinking gun, knife, per seable weapon, then you're only thinking about sport, because in real life, there are no rules.
Yes.
Konnichiwa. I'm Israel Lopez Sensei of the Martial Maze. Right now, you might be asking yourself, what is the Martial Maze? Well, I'm here to tell you. The Martial Maze is a martial arts podcast that deals with the complexities and pitfalls that one encounters when navigating the field of study that is martial arts. These discussions are from the points of view of actual martial artists, and we cover it all, with the occasional special guest, who, of course, are masters in their fields of study. From the president of the United States Judo Association to karate and kung fu royalty. Myself and Barakulat Shidoshi have over 40 plus years of martial experience. So please join us as we make our way through the Martial Maze. New episodes drop weekly, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
Well, to reflect on this, I would say for this gentleman, definitely was marketing and promotion. If anyone does it best in the martial art world, it's BJJ, so they do that very well. With that being said, with videos and showing how proficient BJJ is, you see all of those. No, they will never show the video of the guy who does BJJ getting it handed to him.
Oh,
but
I
they
want to
will,
say, but there's plenty of those.
They will show.
Yeah,
there's plenty of them
yeah,
out there. All right, but what you will see is someone subduing someone. So I would say this: as a martial art, BJJ is an awesome martial art. All right, self-defense, I would say, all right, I brush that off to the side. We look at current BJJ now, the way that's being taught, not using Gracie as an example because Royce Gracie was an elite of his time and what he did. But we're talking about the average person, your brother, your sister, the people that are around you. And so 99% of the time when I've been in a BJJ school, from what I've witnessed, it was on the ground. That's where the lesson started. It started on the ground. All right, so it didn't address really up top game or any of those things. So now there is versions of some kind of up top game being applied because why? Because they face judokas, they face sambo players, they faced wrestlers, and so the single and double leg doesn't work like it would work on an amateur. Okay, so they had to modify and change and address certain situations. Now, when we're talking self-defense, and self-defense is based on the experience of the instructor. And what that comes in, there's two things to take into account. The person or persons you are dealing, the person you're dealing with, or multiple people you're dealing with, or the environment. All right, those are two things to take in consideration. So if you're dealing with a system that is based in self-defense, all right, that self-defense should reflect the environment, all right, that you're working it in. And if it's not, you're going to set your students up for failure. So BJJ, being that it starts on the ground, from what I've seen first, is not, how should I say, reasonable, all right, for self-defense. Even though addressing a situation while on the ground, then it's reasonable. All right, but standing up first, having a top game, learning how to strike, learning how to joint lock from standing, and ultimately learning how to throw an individual and take them down. Does your self-defense curriculum only address two individuals, all right, in an evenly matched duel, which that's not realistic? It should involve multiple individuals. Now, in my environment, it was always 3-on-1. It was never two individuals. That was if you got a fair one, if the block showed you a fair one, okay? Does it address knives? Okay? That's a serious factor there, all right? And so if your self-defense doesn't address knives, not just learning how to use knives, that's a whole nother specialty, but learning how to defend yourself from knives. Also, we're talking about weight and sex. Those are important factors, too, to put into your equation. So, for instance, BJJ has always been marketed as the little guy subdues the big guy, all right? And so when you take someone like myself, who is a small gentleman, all right? So my self-defense reflects my size.
Yes.
Okay? Period. Hands down. So as instructors, knowing how to teach technique to smaller people and knowing how to teach technique to bigger people, all right? Because those rules apply. So a woman that is 120 pounds wet, defending themselves against a 200-pound man who's only been doing BJJ for 2 years, I don't know how that will fare out for that little girl. Now, it's also based on how well the instructor articulates the technique. But the reality is that the 200-pound guy, unless that woman's in the gym lifting weights and doing all kinds of other things, there's strength, there's a lot of things that come into play here. And so if to teach someone small to wrestle someone much bigger for self-defense reasons, not for tournament or
that's what I was about to
sport
say.
reasons.
I said, well, yes, because that's what you'll
That's
see.
detrimental to their health.
Yes.
Unless they've been doing it for several years and learned a decent top game. They did a little judo or sambo, and then you can be a giant slayer.
Well, yeah, but even with that, we're still talking. When you watch those videos, when you see that thing, the first thing I always look at was the big dude punching, kicking, biting. Was he fighting the other person?
Right.
Or was it an agreed upon rule set that says, I'm a big dude, I'm going to just try to wrestle you, manhandle you, da-da-da. And then, of course, it goes back to my perceptions of violence. Like I was telling my students yesterday, so there were two things I want to cover. Folks saying that most of the fights go onto the ground, my student said to me, I think that might come from law enforcement.
Yeah.
And I was thinking the same thing, because when you're cuffing and putting somebody down on the ground, that's more likely where you're going to get into a physical confrontation. So you're on the ground. I take you from a standing position. You start to fight me. I put you on the ground, splay out prone, then cuff you, roll you on your side, right? And that's standard practice.
Right.
So from a law enforcement mindset, yeah, almost every confrontation goes to the ground. You know what I'm saying? And stuff like that. Now, besides that, every video, everything that you can look, and it's just not take my word for it, but every video, when you see the little person taking on the big guy, it's almost always with an agreed upon rule set, meaning the guy's not striking, the guy's not using weapons, this, that, and the third. Again, going back to my class yesterday, if Barack is getting into a fight and I'm standing next to Barack, do you think Barack's going to fight by himself? You've lost your damn mind if you think I'm going to stand there and with the pom-poms and root him on. Oh, we are honky stomping someone. And I use that term, too, because you'd hear the guy with the banjo, and we just start dancing around. That's honky stomping. I'm like, you're just not fighting head up.
But that's the reality,
and that's
in a real situation. And that's why for self-defense, I etch out certain things. Like, for instance, knives, when you are dealing with someone, the first thing I tell my students, that person always has a weapon. Even if that person doesn't have a weapon, they have a weapon. It has no. I'm not looking at size. I'm not looking at it. Listen, the person has a weapon on them. So you better treat that person as a serious threat, number one. Okay? 2, don't get into wrestling. All right? Wrestling will get you stabbed. Okay? Because if that's your first go-to, you're going to have problems. Because, once again, it's your environment. All right. Now, if you don't live in an environment like that, maybe you got kind attackers. All right. I live in an environment, okay, where everyone has a blick on them. Everyone has a gun, or mainly it's a blick. Everyone has a knife, a sharp object of some sort on them, and they've learned how to use it well to fillet you real quick.
So I guess this is my question. BlackHawk, chime in.
Yeah.
Is it based on our culture? Maybe because I'm Afro-Latino. You're African-Caribbean.
Yeah.
You're Caribbean, BlackHawk.
I'm Afro-Caribbean.
You're Afro-Caribbean. Is it because of our environment, our culture, that might suggest that we experience, or because we've experienced that kind of violence? And we do know this. It's not my opinion. African Americans or brown people, we tend to see a lot more violence than most, unfortunately, in this country. But could that be it? Is that the symptom? Help me out, BlackHawk.
Well, what you just kind of highlighted something that's more of a social economical plight, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just so happens that the conditions and criteria that meet that happens to be one that African Americans or Black people are exposed to in higher numbers than every other ethnic group, right? And the reason I want to point that out, because there's someone somewhere saying, see, Black people commit all the crimes. No, if you're living in an area that's 100% populated by white folk and there's crimes going down, it's not a Black person, because we're not there, right? So I just wanted, that's a sidebar. That's
exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
I'm about to say,
But-
I like how you put the
Yeah.
economical
Yeah.
thing in there, because I know plenty of white folks that grew up that way too, where they had to bang.
Yeah.
And yes. So go ahead.
And
I'm sorry.
so-
Go ahead.
Coming from an environment where me personally, I believe, 11 the first time I had a revolver to my jaw, right? That was the first time I realized, under extreme pressure, I get super calm and hyper focused. Okay, story for another day. But in our environments, and I'm going to say urban environment just to kind of make it a little easier
Because
to
that
quantify for
makes a lot more
everybody.
sense. Yeah, go ahead.
You're not fighting one person. It's going to be 2 or 3 or 4 or more. No one's fighting fear. A weapon is going to come into play, and I like what Barack Shidoshi Sensei.
Sensei. Shidoshi is
Barack
just the title,
Sensei.
but I prefer Sensei.
Yeah, technically, yeah. Sadoshi's supposed to be only written, right?
Yeah,
I messed it up all. We started doing that, and we never stopped for the show. For ladies and gentlemen,
Right.
I know there's somebody, because you just brought it up, is going, I knew it! And I'm like, yes, Shidoshi typically is a written title. You
It's just
typically
my
would
title.
never say it.
Yeah,
It's just
I'm
Sensei.
Sensei.
Yeah, it's just Sensei.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So as you pointed out, and I do the same thing with my students, always assume that person has a weapon. In fact, typically routinely in class, I'll have about 3 or 4 weapons on me hidden, and they never know. And it'll just come out during class. And first one's a throwaway. It comes out, boom, boom. Oh, see, yeah, okay, let's get rid of that. So now let's go back to what we're doing. Oh, look, all warfare is based on deception, right? The person in the street is not going to say, let's shoot a fair one. Or they might, knowing that someone is circling behind you, right? So because that's the environment and that's the mindset that we come to, that's what we, and you know, there's instructors out there who haven't actually had to realistically defend themselves.
Thank you.
Right? So, you know, their perspective is theoretical. I've had to save my life once or twice. Let's just say that, right? My daughter is about to turn 16. From the time she is 12, she's had to use the martial arts that I've taught her. Right? It's in school setting. It's not quite as dangerous, but still. And so I'm not going to go and teach somebody, this is what you do when you're scuba diving, because I've never scuba dived. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not a gun expert. I talk about gun disarms briefly. I'm educating myself on firearms. Every other weapon I'm okay with, I'm comfortable with. I'm educating myself. I'm not going to lie to my students and say, well, this is what you do. No, I've never had to use this technique to save my life against an actual gun. And quite frankly, there's things like muzzle flash, you know, and a whole bunch of other things, the heat of that barrel that people don't typically talk about. And if you find yourself having to do this, it's the last resort. If someone hasn't shot you already, just give them what they want. If they wanted to shoot you, they would have shot you already. That's the mindset. So for me, I routinely will say, I'm not here to teach you techniques. I'm here to give you my perspective on survival and give you a methodical thought process in which you can approach survival, so that in multiple situations with a lot of variables, you can kind of have a way to approach it that will do well for you, essentially. So you get these guys or gals, you know, equal opportunists here, that have never actually done this. They you know, I don't even like the term self-defense, self-protection, right? And here's why. If I can avoid the thing before it happens, that's my preference. You're walking down a road, you come to a fork in the road, and there's 2 bridges. One's a steel bridge, one's a 500-year-old bridge with missing planks, the rope is rotting, and it's really windy. Self-protection means I'm going to take the path that looks more solid, right?
Yep.
Self-defense, I'm going to go over that bridge, and when it falls, then I'm going to do something. I'm going to hold on. So that's just another pet peeve. Me being in IT, syntax is important. And sometimes I'm victim to poor syntax myself, right? But I like to try to put things in that perspective. If you're walking down the street and you see a group of people coming your way and it's midnight and there's nobody else on the street, I don't care if they're purple, green, black, white. I don't care what color they are. Move to especially if it seems like they might be drunk. Go the other direction, cross the street, circle around the car, get low, let them lose you in the shadows, let them not see, cut the corner, take off running, change direction. That's self-protection. Why do I have to go fight 5 guys to
Exactly.
prove I'm the baddest man on the planet? No, it's not the stronger, most talented, most agile opponent who's going to win. It's the smartest. And winning is getting home safe. Whether I have a broken rib or whatever I had to do, as long as I'm better than the other person, in better shape, as long as I can get home to my family, that's what's important. In fact, that's literally what's on the back of our shirts in my school.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to come with this mindset, and I'll be the first to tell my students, I don't know the answer to that question. That's a great question. Let's research that together. Because the moment you stop feeding the truth, all you're doing is giving someone an empty meal. And you know, my students are on a first name basis with me. The only time they use formalities when they introduce me to somebody else. That's the way I was taught. You know, Sensei Evans, we called him Lenny. You know, it is what it is. And it was that same family approach that I kind of am still trying to pass down, keeping his memory alive to my students. And I think, to answer your question, sometimes people start to believe their own hype and what they should be saying and what's the trend, and they move away from what's the authentic truth. And, you know, there are many truths, but there are universal truths. Your elbows are only meant to bend one direction without pain.
Yeah.
That's a universal truth if you're a human being. Hell, if you're a dog, their joints are only meant to bend one direction. Any animal. Most animals. So those same things, if my thumb's in your eye, you're not thinking of hurting me. You're thinking of, why is this hurting so much? And so when we see these approaches, it's one of two things. They've never actually been in a real confrontation, or they're new, or they're just mindlessly going by what they were told. And I'll be the first to tell anyone that I converse with, any of my students, anybody that I meet, don't take my word for it. Fact check me. And if you find that I'm wrong, please come back and tell me, because now you're educating me and now I can be better at what I'm doing.
You know what? I mean, you bring up a really good point, though. I mean, I often wonder, sometimes it's just that. I mean, again, if I'm living my life in such a way where violence misses me, I do like that you brought the same analogy, because there is a difference between self-defense and self-protection, even though they're kind of lumped into the same thing. But yes, yeah. Self-protection is living your life in such a way where violence misses you. And self-defense is the intervention. Holy shit, violence found me. Now I got to do a thing.
Yes.
I often wonder that some of this stuff is really based upon, I have to keep myself relevant. I have to be able, because again, if I've never been into a real fight or real confrontation in the street, but I teach martial arts, I got a black belt, I listen to everything my sensei said. Think about it, right? If you listen to everything your sensei said, right, and you live in your life in such a way violence misses you, you went to college, you did it right, you used verbal judo, you used all those things, the only time you ever got into a scuff was in a controlled environment. It's like I was saying to my students yesterday, the only time after that one incident, where it was the last time I ever punched anybody outside of a ring, period. Last time, because I thought I killed him. We thought I killed him and stuff like that, and my whole life would have ended. And it wasn't even my fight. Like, I was just breaking up a fight. It wasn't even my fight. My life would have been over. It was the last time I ever struck another human being. I'm not saying I never thrown anybody after that, but it was the last time I struck another human being in a fight, outside of a ring. But the point I'm making about it is, if I've done all those things and I train my students right, so my student is now trying to regurgitate a thing, you know, like I'm dead, I'm gone, or wherever, I'm somewhere else, and now my student's trying to teach. And he's trying to teach and say, look, these are battle tested, and not having that experience, because he's never gotten into a fight. He's never fought outside the ring. How is what, you know, I think sometimes this really comes from folks wanting to continuously be relevant. Like, why would you study with me, right? Case in point, firearms, right? If I've never shot a gun, right? Why would you come learn gun safety from me? I've never shot the gun. I can tell you about it. I can tell you how you take one apart, service it, this, that, and the third. But I've never actually shot one. You know, I'm like, oh my God, it went off. You know, right? So I could have one of those moments, but I wonder if that's it.
Yeah, that's a huge portion of it. I'm going to reflect on, first and foremost, let's just go back a little bit to the environment, and then I want to chime on to what you're saying. One, my self-defense curriculum reflects my environment and my personal experience. All right. Now, what does that mean? Does one need to actually be in the physical crap to get it? Not necessarily. You can be an observer and study it and document it. All right, and be able to educate people on how the pros and cons on how to navigate your urban jungle. All right. Now, when we say environment per se, all right, me personally, I grew up as a youth in Springfield, Massachusetts, as a youth.
The hood.
Now,
No, kidding.
now you can Google it. Springfield is one of the most violent cities in Massachusetts. On top of that, this is nothing to be proud of. All right, but it is, all right, in Massachusetts, and it has its stats in the world. It's a murder capital. Okay,
I don't understand it. Me personally, I don't get
now,
it.
from there, you know, from growing up there, okay, in the little neighborhoods that I grew up, I also lived in Boston. I lived in Mattapan, which they call Murder Pan. Okay, and I lived in Roxbury. And then throughout the 90s, though, pretty much a good portion of the 90s, I grew up in Brooklyn. All right, in Bed-Stuy.
In the 90s, yes, sir.
Yeah, so my knowledge comes from being out there in those streets and knowing how most cats get along, how they vibe. Now, this is just in those three neighborhoods, which they're similar in a way because they're in the East Coast, but different vibes. Each one is very unique in their own. Okay, and you got to know how to navigate those. It's a different neighborhood in Boston, in those areas, versus in Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, but also in these urban jungles. Like, for instance, you got South Boston. All right, that's where all the rough white boys are at.
I'm about to say,
okay,
Southie,
and so I don't know. Those guys out there mingle different. Their lingo is different. Their mannerisms are different. And so you got to be able to navigate all that and to be able to educate your student on all those different things. There is no one fix. All right, every neighborhood is unique. As you go down south, their neighborhoods are unique in Georgia and everywhere in Bankhead and all there. Different environments. You go to Cali and you go to Compton and you go different environments. Now, we have a way of understanding us as black folks and being able to tell certain social cues. All right. But then a lot of that, I didn't grow up in that neighborhood. What does that word mean? What did they say? What is whooping? What is whooping? And what is that? And what is this? So you don't know if you're being set up in any shape, way, or form. So for someone to have a pure self-defense plan that reflects all, to me, is delusional. All right. Absolutely delusional. All right. Because listen, if you go to other countries, if you go to Ghana, if you go to Nigeria, if you're in the Caribbean and you go to Jamaica or Martinique, Guadeloupe, how they handle themselves in the street is different. In Puerto Rico, they handle themselves different. Their codex, their mannerisms, all of that is insanely different. So if you're going to be teaching self-defense, it should reflect just that, your environment and your experience. Now, one thing that I make a distinction in is this. Self-defense is self-defense. Self-defense is learning how to control a situation, de-escalate a situation, controlling the threat. All right? Fighting is another circumstance where it escalates. But if you are teaching a complete system, one needs to know how to fight. Self-defense is not fighting.
Well, no, but I guess that's when we talk about self-defense and self-protection, that's the thing. Self-defense is not fighting. I think a lot of times people get those two things confused. Self-defense is literally just getting home safe, navigating transitional spaces, all of that, right? And the intervention. And my intervention, it has one goal. The goal is to get me home safe. That one rule, right?
Right.
Is to get home safe. So yes, I think a lot of times when people think of self-defense, if me and you are grappling on the ground, my self-defense done failed. You know what I'm saying at that point? Because now we're grappling on the ground. You know, my first action, right? We've had this conversation before. Anybody who studied traditional jitsu understands this. That first action or combination of neutralizes the perceived threat by lethal means, meaning giddy up. If I got my blade, I'm going to stick you before anything else. If I got a perceivable weapon, I'm going to use it. I'm going to exhaust all of those things before I go hand to hand.
Right.
Period.
Yep. Yeah. And so now, real quick, in order for someone to be sharp in the area of fighting, you must fight. All right. Yes. And if you are not fighting in your dojo, everything is controlled drills. You're drilling and you got the drills on lock. But you're not dealing with an uke that is not going to be compliant. He's not going to go with you. So now you're dealing with resistance. You're dealing with you're trying to create pressure for your student and put them in the most uncomfortable situation as possible. And this is where sport is healthy. All right. And this is the importance of sport because one, if you're not doing sport, like I'm not a sports school, but everything is like I really push my students hard in my school to put them in the most uncomfortable situation. So I start off easy with them, but then I get violent a bit to teach them what it's like to be in violent situations, okay? And as much as possible so they know how to handle that kind of pressure. Now, the only way you're going to win the fight, and this is real simple, be the better fighter. In order to be a better fighter, one must fight. And if you're not fighting at all, zero zilch in your schools, you may learn good self-defense, but self-defense can turn into a fight real quick. Yes. All right? And if you don't know how to deal with those situations, because most of my situations, it was always 3-on-1. So now you're learning 1-on-1 self-defense, but now you have to learn to read the room. There's certain training with that, all right? Always, it's not about the person that's in front of you. It's about the people that are on the side of you and the guy that's behind you. Now, in my hood, all right, and this is in Bed-Stuy, okay? Usually, Bed-Stuy is mad smooth when it comes to taking people out. So you could be beefing with one person, and you don't necessarily see his peoples. They're there. They're there. One dude's reading the newspaper. Another dude is doing something else. And they're peeping it out. And you think it's just you and that person. And that person comes creeping to the side. And you start looking at him. And you're paying attention to those dudes. But you missed the guy who had the little shank in the back that stuck it in your back of your neck. While the other dude ran and punched you out. All right? And knockout games are big in New York. All right? The run and punch. All right, that's serious. You can kill someone with those kind of hits, and you don't even need to be trained. Mm-hmm. Just 150 pounds, 160 pounds running and clamming someone in the back of the head, you can put them in ICU really quick. So you're training for a lot of those kind of circumstances. But also, too, listen, I'm not trying to grapple. I'm trying to bump. I'm trying to hit you and move. Evasion. Knowing how to move. My experience, I had a tire iron, one of those iron tires. It swung at me. Listen, the first thing that you should be teaching your students, all right, for me personally, is how to get out of there. All right, evasion, not just blocking. Blocking is a special thing. All right, and you better know what you're doing or you might mess around and get that hitting, that iron hitting your forearm and break your arm. Yeah. All right, so you need to know how to evade and get out there and know how to run. All right, and sometimes you may, and this is from my personal experience, sometimes you don't get that. Sometimes you may be chased, so you got to use defensive measures where you can put yourself in defensive corners where you can kind of funnel the people one in at a time to take them out versus them circling around you. There's a lot to talk about.
But that's what I'm saying to you.
Yes,
but
yes,
everything
absolutely.
you just said, though, is based upon your experience, right?
Right.
You've experienced violence or violence being enacted against you. I think we all have, to a degree where the average person just isn't experiencing that kind of violence. So again, where your mindset, so think about it. What did you just say? When I'm teaching my students, I'm teaching them for bop, 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 bop. But now I'm in the suburbs. You know,
Right, right,
where they
right.
ain't living that life.
Your
In fact,
martial art will reflect the suburbs.
No, but my point I'm making is case in point. It's like me explaining that to my students. I'm like, yo, man, we had to, and I look at them and they look at me with I won't say disgust, but fear. Like, oh Jesus, did what? Well, did people live that way? Why? You know, it's
Yeah,
like again,
yeah.
and you're like, well, why? And so my thing is,
And also too, hold on, and definitely I say BJJ is not a great idea, especially in New York City. All right, because I ain't trying to, if you are a real New Yorker, you in those subways, you moving all around.
no,
New
listen,
York is dirty
I
as hell.
I would tell you, what a lot of those folks learn is here's the thing, and this I got it from some solid cats that do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It was what they'll tell you in a heartbeat is, no, what I use in the street is very different from what I use in sport. And like that when we're rolling and doing this, that, and the third, yeah. But I'm gonna niche. Like if I end up falling down, I'm gonna. And then you'll listen to, and they almost all sound the same. They run the gambit the same. They do
What do they do? I mean, I'm curious to know because they don't. I mean, well, I'm not saying some instructors may do it, but they're not teaching striking.
No, most of those guys actually know how to strike. Like I haven't met.
It's part of their syllabus
But,
to know how to do a cross punch and
listen,
all this that.
I'm
Not
not going to get
anymore.
into all of that, but what I am going to say is this.
The Martial Maze presents the Modern Combative series on YouTube. So the Martial Maze takes an in-depth documentary-style approach to not only the martial arts techniques found in the systems, but the practitioners of those very systems as well. With over a combined 50-plus years of martial arts experience, Barack Yalin Shidoshi and Israel Lopez Sensei endeavor to explore it all as they travel the United States, exploring modern combative systems. New Season 3 episodes coming to YouTube 2023. So be sure not to miss the Martial Maze Presents Modern Combative series on YouTube.
Go ahead, BlackHawk. Hello.
It used to be, right?
It really was. It was part of Gracie's system.
So it used to be like I remember as a white belt, one of my first tests was we had a part of the test, put gloves on, mount the person, and punch them for real in the face. This is during the belt ranking. As fast, hard as you can. Don't care if it's your friend. And if the instructor felt that you weren't really trying to hit him, you failed automatically. Right? Mm-hmm. You can't do some of those things today, right? And you learn real quick, I better be quick, because fear is a really good thing. Fear gets a bad rep, but what fear does is it heightens your senses, right? Mm-hmm. It makes you more alert. It really, you learn to control the fear and make it work for you instead of making it paralyze you. And I just want to roll back real quick to something that both of you guys were saying. Here's why BJJ, one of the reasons MMA is getting that's the thing. That's, because they're pressure testing all the time, right? That's the one thing that they're doing that traditional schools don't always do.
Yes.
Obviously, we all do it in our schools, right? But not every school does it. And I'll tell you, the way I grew up, I don't want my kids to have to grow up that way. So I have to find other ways of getting them ready without traumatizing them with the stuff that I had to go through and endure, right? And let's talk about blade training. You could tell your students all they want, treat it like it's real. They're not. So I pull a blade and I pin it right on my chest. And I take that shoulder furthest away from them. And I jam them with the other hand. I walk up nice and slow. I'm like, feel it? This is real? You see it? Okay, good. And I just grab them and jam them real hard. And I'm keeping it here because I don't want them to be like, what the hell? And cut themselves on the blade. Okay. I'm keeping it far from them. I'm jamming them. But that feeling, shit, that's a real weapon. It don't matter that it's way back here. Mm-hmm. And I say, you see that feeling? Remember that feeling. Now let's go back to the the training weapons, because and if they, it's not a game out there, right? I had one student. I'm like, okay, no one's here yet. Let's go. Knife attacks, and we could do the nice disarms. I'm like, go ahead, you're attacking me, and he's going, and I'm like, why'd you stop? I said, there's no stopping. He's like, Yame, there's no tap, there's no Yame, right?
Mm-hmm.
You either die or you survive right now, and we're rolling around, and I'll intentionally bring myself the way your average, what we call civilians, not people who don't train, is going to use this weapon. So we're both rolling around there on the, do what you got to do. There's no stopping. There's no, if you get too tired to stop me, you die. And you have to do that every now and again, because a real fight is not this perfect demonstration that you see. It's ugly, it's dirty, it's messy. There's no perfect techniques. You're going to be falling over each other. Stuff happens.
Well, you know, I love that you're bringing it up, because there's a truth to that. Like the handful of people that have gotten killed, even the judoka and stuff like that. Look, I think the point that needs to be driven home is, if you don't think you're going to actually get hurt at the dojo, no one walks into the dojo thinking they're going to go to the hospital that evening or not go home at all. So it doesn't matter how hard you really go at the dojo, your student in the back of their mind knows that there's a breaking point. You're not worried about dying. It wasn't like when we were coming up. I remember the first time I was getting scared of Kenny, because we're working a technique and he was just firing full bore. There was zero thought in his mind. And in my mind, this guy's really trying to hurt me now. He's really trying to kill me. And if I don't get it right, I'm going to actually get hurt. And there was no go sue or you know what I'm saying? First, I got to get out of his house, right? Because I'm training at his house. I'm like, first, I got to be able to leave to get all of that done, right? So I got to get this right. And, and then because, again, you're right. You don't know how you're going to act until you've been in real violence. Like, I know this woman, and I'm not going to really talk about her name because I didn't get her permission, but I'm going to kind of talk about her story. She had trained for a handful of years, and she did tournament, did all these things, and was one hell of a grappler. The first time her husband punched her in the head, all of that changed, stopped. She froze. Her husband kicked the ever-loving crap out of her in her house. She was of the domestic violence. And I, again, not going to get too far into her story, but her narrative stuck with me, or her story stuck with me, because I've seen her fight. I've seen her compete. She's a champion. She gets it done. One of the hardest women I've ever seen throw a punch and a kick. But her husband hit her, no training. Just a big old dude, you know what I'm saying? I always say a country dude, right. He's got the roof rack and the gun in his, that guy, right? In the truck, right. And stuff like that, But yeah, just a big old dude. She had never dealt with that kind of violence. She had never dealt with a real life situation where her husband, somebody she had loved for so much, was looking to kill her, looking to do real damage to her. She had never been there, never been battle tested in the dojo, never, So it brought me back to thinking about this. You guys just brought this out in me right now. I'm thinking, how do we train an individual? More importantly, if I've never experienced that kind of violence, do I train someone for that kind of violence? Or do I have no business training somebody? Like, military teaches military for a reason. You got a guy he's done 2 tours, this, that, and the third, and he's going to talk about it with you. He's the specialist. Well, we are martial artists, right? We are specialists in our field. We teach professionally because we get paid for it, right? Or even if you don't, or you're teaching volunteer. Well, either way, you're a special. People go to you for your expertise. So should you be teaching if you have nothing realistically to draw from?
That's where I say a lot of folks are delusional. All right? They're delusional. In their mind, they feel they're fit. They're fit. It's no more different than martial art instructors, whether you're contracted to teach military or law enforcement. And they put it out, I train military, I train law enforcement. And so here's the little kicker here. Okay? Most of these guys who trained military and law enforcement were there to teach their discipline. Okay, so you were contracted to teach judo there, or you were contracted to teach some form of jutsu there. All right, but you were never a soldier, you were never a cop. All right, so what you were working with these soldiers, they're not in tactical gear. They don't have their rifles or sidearms or cuffs or any of these things.
Shit they wear when they're in country.
Right, your vest on or any of those things. So now my question is to ask the instructor there, and most likely it's in that discipline, or did you serve? Or were you law enforcement? Because now if you're teaching those, that's an entirely different class to teach if you're all geared up. And so now this is where I stay in my lane. Okay, because I have no right teaching military, or, I have my dabbled in law enforcement, but still, that's different.
Well, it's definitely changed.
Yeah, it's changed. All right, so I believe that if you're military or law enforcement and you want to do a martial art, that's a side thing. But what you learn on base and what you learn in the academy, strictly tactical. All right, and so instructors kind of like jump on that bandwagon, and it's to get more students. It's promo, okay? It's promo, things like that.
But that promo might get somebody killed.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, and that's what you're doing to your students. You're setting them up for failure over and over again. So what I say to my students is this: it doesn't matter how. What I say is that, listen, if you want to be better at fighting, you must fight. There is no way around this. No way, zero. All right. Doesn't matter how many years you've been in the martial arts. It doesn't matter how much time you spend in the gym, and it doesn't matter. None of these matter on how many techniques you know. All right. At the end of the day, okay, how often do you fight?
Wait. I got to add to that though. Not just fight, but fight and reflect.
Right.
Because it's a cultural thing, because you can't. One of my students, we were talking about that the other day. Joe, thank you. It's the whiplash kind of effect where you figure if I keep doing this over and over and over again, I'll eventually glean a way around it. No. You still got to be able to take it home. Yeah. Even when you fight, you still need to look back, look at the video of it, reflect what went right, what went wrong. Did I completely black out? Was I aware? Was I not aware? Especially in a controlled environment, dude. If you understand a thing, you can talk about that thing. You can break it down. We're talking about this. There's a handful of us. We were talking about this with framing, right? So once you understand the concept of framing on the ground, you can apply it to whether you're using your legs, your arms, this, that, and the third, because you understand framing. So I don't have to teach you, well, if he's doing this, you do this. And if he's doing that, you do this. And if he's doing that. Well, no, brother, make a frame. Make a frame so that the person on top of you is not smashing you. You can still breathe and you can create some space.
Right.
Make a frame. Well, which kind of frame? I don't know.
What does the
take
situation?
it home and ponder it. I might not know. I'm going to take it home and ponder it. You know a handful to kind of give you an idea, a rough outline, but use the algorithm, baby. That's why you learn it.
No. And that's dead on. And so most folks are not doing enough of that. So you have arts, you have many martial arts, like for instance, judo has always implemented that. You got to get on the mat. I'm sorry. Yes. It's not about how many techniques you know.
Take it home and ponder it.
You got to get on the map. All right. You in BJJ, because it comes from judo. They called it Kano Jitsu, so I understand why they call it Jujitsu there. All right. But it is basically judo. All right. So the whole point is get on the mat. Muay Thai, get in the ring. All right. Get in the ring and let me see what you can do. A lot of the other arts, that's absent.
Well, yeah. Well, because but and I'll give you a second to chime in, BlackHawk, because I know you chomping at this one. But the problem with that is most karate wasn't meant to be a sport. Wasn't meant to be trained that way. It's not. Listen, if we just drill, that's enough, because if I can't go live and eye gouge you, I can't go live and bite you. I can't go live, you know what I mean, and be vital point striking you left, right, and the third. You would stop.
Man, half of those techniques I don't even see in karate, man. I just see punching and kicking back and forth.
Yeah, because they just do the sport now. Yeah. Because again, we go back to
I never seen an inside block. I never seen an outside block.
No,
I never seen a Nikita. I never seen it.
There are folks that there was somebody who did a really good tutorial. Now, damn, I need to look it up
I'm
because
just saying, show me.
Well, no, it's because somebody did a really good tutorial on that because he says, look, when you know how you know you're in a sport is when there are no blocks. When you're you're just counter striking, and all that other good stuff. Where you don't mind it taking a punch to give a punch and stuff like that, or the parries and reverse. BlackHawk, come on, man, we're monopolizing. We got you on here, brother. You got to sometimes jump in or say clam chowder, one of the two.
I don't want to offend anyone, but so this is how I'll phrase it. When you look at really good karate, the way it was intended to be applied, it looks really similar to jujitsu.
Yes, we know.
The timing of everything, the ebb and flow, the transition, the nagari, koshiwaza, all that's in there where it's not this rigid thing that you see people do today. Not many teach it that way here in the States that I have seen. I haven't seen every karate school, right? And what you see people doing is working for them, and you'll see it blend with jujitsu. But when you look at traditional karate taught the old way back, and you see it being implemented, I hesitate to use the word correctly. I'm going to say in the way it was intended to be implemented. And I've seen this very few times. It looks very similar to jujitsu. So it brings the story back. Not the story. It brings the question back. Is it the art or the person? It's the person.
Well, hold on. Wait a minute.
That's what I said at the beginning.
No, when you bring it to Okinawa still, I would never say that it looks choppy. It's answering that first rule each time. It's that first move or combinations of. Take away my opponent's ability to do X, Y, Z, period. And that's what it's predicated on. I can't speak now.
Predicated.
There you go. On. And so when you see it actually, I will say this, it looks very flowy and stuff like that. You can see exactly where it gets its roots from Chinese Kung Fu.
It's beautiful.
Yes, it really does. Like when you see guys move, and then no, because that's Japanese, the big stances and Okinawans just short and just to the point, man. Listen, man, it's just got to work, bro. I'm not worried about all of that. Okay, health and okay, yeah, I'll meditate later on, but right now I gotta take your lunch from you. You know, I mean that's the reality to it.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, sir. I just needed to chime in on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. So, the thing is, getting back to the question, right? Which art is the best, or whatever the gentleman was saying, in that when you opened up about
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the best.
It's a wonderful thing.
My church is the best.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yes.
Right. So I liken it to this, right? I'm classically trained in ballet. Barack, you're classically trained in ballroom dancing, right? Israel, by the way, I said your name correctly, right?
Yeah,
it's right.
I've been going with Lopez because it was easier.
You brought out the government name. I almost like, did I do something wrong? Am I in trouble? No.
You're classically trained in lyrical dance.
Okay.
Then I take you guys down to the Fet with me. Mm-hmm. A different piece.
Yeah. It's a different piece if you go to the Fet.
All right, so see, he knew what the Fet was. Like, in the car, I'm talking to him on the phone, and he says he brings up the Fet, and I'm thinking Boba Fett. It's tattooed on my arm, actually. I'm like, the Mandalorian crest. So I got the Mandalorian crest on my arm, and when he said the Fett, the first thing that my mind went right to Star Wars. I'm like, yo, this brother right here. All right, I'm in my car, and it's a Caribbean thing. But I said, yo, what? So I had to ask. I said, what is the Fett?
Right. So I gave a brief education on it, but the point is, we're the best in the world at these three forms of dance, right? We're the top of the food chain. But now, as the kids say, we go down to 42nd Street by that, the bleachers.
Yeah.
Some hip hop, and we start getting sturdy with it. I'm
Yep.
like, I get my daughter to kind of keep me up as much as I can right? And I'm looking at them getting sturdy with it. I'm like, you're breakdancing. With a little crunk thrown in there.
They call it what is it? Sturdy. Sturdy with
Getting sturdy with it.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's new
basically,
generation.
it's
That's
like,
new generation. Respect
getting
that.
down with a get down. Y'all going in.
I'm
You're doing your
officially
thing.
old.
I'm telling you, listen, I let my baby girl keep me up. I'm like, I was like, so what's the terminology of today? But I look at it and all I said, getting sturdy with it. You're breakdancing. Y'all didn't invent this. This is nothing new. This is the same thing in martial arts, right? And I'll say this. I have a very strong Newaza base, right? With the perspective and the philosophy of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, more specifically Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, from the early 90s. I see things that are very wonderful and great in sport, like the rubber band guard.
There's
My
no way to
knees
blow
and
out your
hips
knee
not
over
allowing me to
time.
do that today. And even if they did, just because it's a new thing, I don't teach that. And I tell people, I'm teaching you the way I was taught. I will add the new moves that people are coming up with that I think is going to be useful in an actual street confrontation. You know how I would and I actually don't go down to the ground in an actual confrontation, live confrontation in the street. But if somehow I tripped, I rocked them and they decided, they're bigger than me and they want to take me down. By the time we hit the ground, I'm getting back up because on the way down, between me and the impact of the ground, something's broken on that person.
Exactly.
And then I'm rolling up and getting up, because I know their friend is about to stomp the crap out of the back of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Or I got a bat or a pipe or a knife or a gun about to come out. And I need to get the hell out of there or whatever. I'm not waiting around to mind my work. And so, this thing where just because it's new and we're gonna do this to stay relevant, and then you see every art form now are doing joint locks and this, that, and the other. Okay, I ain't mad at nobody. I'm really not, right? But I'm also not chasing that dragon, so to speak, of the new technique. Listen, with everything that I've accumulated and over my 30 years of training and teaching and everything else and fighting. And this conversation will have off the air. All of 1995, interesting year for me. But I only need 3 or 4 things 90% of the time to achieve my objective, which is staying safe.
Mm-hmm.
And, and again, I want to say something, but it's going to take us in a different direction. I'm going to say it, but I don't really want to pursue it. I was recently attacked on the train a couple of weeks ago, right? And I did a little post about it on Facebook. And I had the equivalent of martial arts blue balls because I'm like, legally, I can't do anything. And there was no longer a threat. And this is a conversation I have with my students all the time, because especially the younger ranks, they're like, so sensei, because I started explaining to them, yeah, you're going to do wonderful. You're going to go home and you're going to get sued by the person you put in the hospital.
Civil liability. I do a whole class on it.
Even though you were the victim, right? And so the question I get was, sensei, then I don't want to tell on myself on air, but, termination is the default. And then we scale back from there. Because if you're ready for that, then you can choose depending on the situation. It's not, I'm just going to treat you with kid's gloves, and then if I need to, I'll escalate. No, I'm starting from the point of, if I got to take you out, I got to take you out. Oh, I don't have to take you out. Let me scale that back. And that's the default, for at least for me, right? And how I teach. So the thing is, well, you have to know your penal code of where you're at.
Know the laws of your
right?
land.
In New York State, it's very simple. If the person is no longer advancing, you're not being attacked. So if I was to walk up to you, pull the Will Smith, smack you, and in one turn and walk away, and you come like hell no, and you come get me, you're going to jail. And in New York, if there's not like the owner of the establishment that saw this go down, not the Joe Smo on the street who's the witness, by default, law enforcement is taking everybody in because it's not for them to make that judgment call right there. It's very rare that that does not happen, right? So you have to understand certain things, right? So when I was attacked, I'm like, what the hell? And, you know, I got hit with the shoulder NFL style, trying to almost knock me back down 30 flights of stairs, and I popped up, and it's about to be an Oizuki right in the back of that person. I turned around because the person kept going, and the hand was up to shield or the shooter or whatever was going to happen, and I'm like, they're still going. I expected half the way I got hit, speared NFL style, and I'm 250 pounds to move me, and they timed it. I peeped all that, and I braced for the impact just as it was happening. I'm like, oh, hell no. And it just, everything reacted, and then I consciously had to pull back before I attacked. And because it would have been an attack in the eye. See, justice and the law, two different things, right? So he was out of striking range. I was about to do the Sparta. I was like, can't do it. He's no longer a threat. And co-worker came after me, and their train wouldn't stop at the station because of police activity, which means whatever he was looking for, he found down there. Somebody obliged him. Person was covered up so they couldn't be, couldn't tell you if they were purple, blue polka dots. And that's the thing. And I use it as a teaching experience for my students, because just because you can't do something doesn't mean you should do something. And doing the right thing sometimes, a lot of times, feels horrible.
You know what? But also with that being said, I mean, it sounds more like to me he was looking for something. I mean, you're not a small dude. I've met you in person. I mean, I think we're about the same size. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a small person. Unless I'm standing next to Gabriel Gonzaga, then I'm a small person. But moving past that, I'm like, man. I'm like, so you never know. Yeah, you went to engage. He turned around and shoot you. He might have been looking for a reason to stab or shoot a person. A person of color, maybe. I don't know. You don't know. You know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. But yeah, bro. However, with New York and I know we don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but they're about to test that law right away when that brother goes to trial.
Oh yeah.
Whether or not
the white guy the military. I don't know if he was active or not. But on the
no, because it goes back to the perception though. I think we've talked about this. I did it with my students in class. I said perception. It doesn't matter if other people in the video are holding that guy's hands. It's what my perception was with that guy. I'm behind him, holding him. If I let him go, can he attack me?
Right.
And stuff like that. So goes back to perception.
So not to derail us again, but here's what really grinds my gear about that, right? We all teach Jimmy Waza. But when I say we all, martial artists.
Yes. Well, military, I know military goes over it.
Military. But are we teaching, you hold that hold for more than 10 seconds. 6 to 10 seconds is all you need. If you apply it properly, 5 seconds.
I'm about to say 3.
Versus
3 seconds.
Right?
You were sleeping 3.
Yes. Right? Let's assume the person is struggling. You didn't get it synced in, and you take more than 10 seconds. Anything more than 10 seconds, you're flirting.
It's like a knee on the neck, man.
Brain damage happens at about a minute and a half.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beginning of brain damage. When we're talking about air chokes versus blood chokes, right?
Yep.
It's 33.3 pounds of pressure. I hope I'm not mixing them up. I'm not. To crush the larynx. 44.4 pounds of pressure for the carotid arteries.
Yep.
Why aren't these numbers being taught in every dojo?
Well, because again, it goes back to expertise and level of training, and again, martial arts, unfortunately, is one of those things that isn't regulated in such a way where you could have just that. I mean, you have different federations. Like if you're a judoka, we have the United States Judo Federation, USA Judo, and the USJF, and then the IJF. So we have all these governing bodies that create all these different rules, and it would be just that. It'd be like, listen, you should know X. But even in those environments, I don't think there's very many people who can tell you what the pressure is here, what the pressure. Shit. I know there's a handful of folks that don't know the difference between a Hadaka Jame and a trachea choke being two different chokes. You know what I'm saying? They're like, oh, no, this is the same thing. And I'm like, no. The pressure's here. It's a completely different thing and stuff like that. This is not a strangulation. Now I'm breaking out. I'm going to crush it and kill him.
Choke.
Yeah, and stuff like that, and just that being said. But all right, brother, we are well at time. Yeah, yes, we are. Even starting late too. But I'm like, man, I know because I know you have things you have to get to today, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being on the Martial Maze with us, ladies and gentlemen. We've been doing this with BlackHawk Sensei. Now, where are you located? Where can folks find you if they're looking for you?
I'm in Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn?
You can go to my website, my website, tnkmartialarts.com. It has all my social media. The name of the school is Tobutori No Kurai Jujitsu, but it's branded as TNK Jiu-Jitsu to make it easy for everybody. And I would love to have you guys, and we'll talk offline about coming on my podcast. Shion Ross Greenberg and myself have a podcast, Real Martial Talk.
You know what? I'm so sorry. Yes, I went to pitch that originally, and I hadn't talked with you about whether or not it was kosher to do it or not.
Yes.
So we have you on, and yes, you do have a really good podcast. Like that, which actually his podcast, they do this intro in the beginning, and I said I was so impressed by it. I said if we're gonna go into utilizing these podcasts and putting them on film, so people can see them on YouTube, I'm gonna take a page from that. I will always give you credit for our intro because it came from you. Exactly, watching your podcast and stuff like that. That was pretty cool, and I was like, oh, is that what we're doing wrong? No, so yeah, go ahead. Again, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, so I'm in Brooklyn, New York. I'm in John Huss Moravian Church, 3rd floor. It's on Ocean Avenue between Lincoln and Parkside, right across from Parkside Park. There's train stations nearby, and you can just reach out through the website or any of my social media. If you Google Baba BlackHawk, that's BABA BlackHawk, you'll also find me. And people always ask, what's the deal with a Black Hawk? It's a spiritual name, and that's a personal story that I'll share with you guys off here. And that's how you can find me. And I appreciate. Listen, I've been a long-time fan. I was honored to be asked to come on, and I'm really enjoying the conversation. I know we can talk for hours.
Oh yeah, this could easily be a 4-hour conversation. I had to break it up in segments. I'm probably gonna have to break it up anyway because we talked about so much good stuff. There's nothing to cut out this episode. So it's right now we're at an hour 14, going into 15. So that means it's definitely gonna have to be broke up in segments. There's no way I can just release it as is and stuff like that. Because folks, Americans, we like to have it our way, like BK.
That's all right, man. We save some for the Patreon.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, save some for the Patreon. All right, so with that being said, I'm with my partner in crime, Barakulad Shidoshi.
And I'm with my partner here, Israel Lopez Sensei.
And you've been listening to
The Martial Maze.